What's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Then We Eat. Have been paying attention to the channel the last few weeks? Might have kind of clued into what we might be making today. A couple weeks ago we had a video that ties into today. A couple weeks after that we had a video that ties into today. And that brings us to this video. This week's episode, we're going to be making pulled pork poutine. So I've gone ahead, I've peeled all of my potatoes already, so there's not a peel on them. If you use yellow flesh potatoes, you can leave the peel on. We have Yukon Golds here today. I find the skin to be a little too much for me, so I take them off. Especially with this chipper, it's a lot easier with them off. If you prefer them on, you can keep them on, it's not a big deal. Now, as I mentioned, I do have this chipper here today. It makes a big difference. I've hand cut fries for years. Always did a pretty good job on them. About 2 years ago though, found this old fry chipper at my grandparents' place. Been using it ever since. Let me tell you, the fries are amazing this way. Way better than anything I could do by hand. Nice and consistent, and the cook is just so much better. So what we're gonna do for the blanch, we're gonna cook them for about 3.5 minutes. You're gonna get some sugar crystals start to form on the outside of your potato. That's when you know you're done. I find about 3.5 minutes for my deep fryer is good. Just keep an eye out for those sugar crystals. Because you're cooking with oil and your fries were soaking in water, you're going to want to try to dry off as much of the water as you can to avoid having too many blowbacks or boil ups from your oil. Like that. And I hadn't even got anything in it yet. Trust me, if you cook them at home, you will start to see kind of little lumps and bumps on it. It's the sugar poking through. So now we're going to transfer those back into the bowl they came out of. I'm going to stick them in the fridge. I want to try to slow or stop that cooking process as much as I can right now. With the fries now blanched, let's turn it over to Steve.
So, this week on the show, we'll be making gravy. Gravy is one of those things that's different for almost everybody. We probably have, I don't know, every time I make it, it's probably different actually. So, I'm going to show you a variation of one of the gravies that I make, and you can make whatever adjustments from there, and I'll kind of let you know along the way what differences you can do. So let's get started. We're going to start with about 4 tablespoons of butter, and we'll just let that melt down a little bit. Okay, so once the butter is melted down, we're going to add about 1/4 cup of flour. All right, so we're just going to let this brown up a bit, just so that the flour quits tasting like flour. You'd be amazed at just a little bit of browning to the flour, what a difference in the flavor there is. So we'll give this another minute or so. All right, so once the gravy is brown, or the flour is browned a bit, we're going to add just about maybe a tablespoon of brandy. Watch you don't inhale those fumes. If you don't have brandy, you don't have to add it. If you would rather use red wine, use red wine. It really does not matter. So we're just going to cook the alcohol off that for a minute. And now we're going to add, in this case, 3 cups of beef broth. Once again, this can be a mixture of chicken and beef, chicken, beef, vegetable, whatever you like. So you want to just stir this in fairly slowly, just so that the gravy keeps a nice smooth consistency. So the broth is added. We'll just let that heat up a little bit. So because of the time of year, our gardens are blossoming everywhere. We've got lots of fresh produce, and the other thing we have is a ton of fresh herbs. So today I'm going to be using fresh herbs. I've got some parsley, some thyme, and some rosemary in here. I'm going to use probably close to a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half. If you were using dry, you want to use about a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half. Once again, with spices, it's a little dicey because we generally, on a recipe from the internet, would double the spice. So it's just personal preference. At this point, we're going to add some black pepper, maybe about half a teaspoon. And I'm going to hold off on the salt for now. Some of the broth can be a little salty. We're out of homemade broth right now, so we did use store-bought stuff. We generally make all our broths in the fall for the winter because we don't use a lot in the summer like we do in the winter. So once it's up a bit, then we're going to add, as I say, about a tablespoon. We'll start with that, see what it tastes like, and then we can always add a little bit more. So once it starts simmering again, you'll find that it will start to thicken up. So just give it a couple of minutes, let it start to simmer, and then you'll see the difference in the texture of the gravy. And you can probably already see the difference in how thick the actual gravy is. So we get another minute or so, it'll look a little better. All right, so just give this a little taste, see what we need to add or subtract. I think a little more pepper, and I think it does need just a tad of salt. I'm also going to add, if I can reach it here, I'm just going to add just a splash of Worcestershire. It's going to darken up the gravy a bit, and it'll act a bit like salt. So we'll try that first before we add any more salt. Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. All right, so that's it. So we'll turn this off, put a lid on it, and at this point, my part of this video is done, and we'll leave it up to Chris to carry on from here and tell you what we're doing next.
That's a mighty fine looking gravy you just got there. Now let's get on to the pork and finish dinner. As always, turn our induction on. I am going to keep it on pretty low because I'm going to be heating the pork, then adding some barbecue sauce. I don't want to burn that barbecue sauce, so keep it low, cook it slow, should be good. And as we know with induction, it's heated up pretty much right away, so let's add our meat and get cooking. Should be far enough along now. Let's add some barbecue sauce. Basically, whatever we have left. There we go. So, if you were done, you could now add it to the rest of your ingredients. Unfortunately, I still have to finish the fries, so I'll throw it on the stove and we'll finish up our fries. You're probably looking at about 5-ish minutes to finish them off, so let's get cooking. Our fries are now finished. Let's pull them out, let them drain a bit, then we can build our poutine. So as you can see, my fries are quite white. I have some fairly fresh oil, which is why they're kind of white. If you use older oil, it's darker oil, it will darken your fries much more. I have a casserole dish here. We're gonna fill that up with some fries here. I'm gonna put a layer in the bottom, then I'll build my poutine, then I'll put a layer on top. Sprinkle some cheese over the top, a little more curd, throw some of this meat over the top. Now because the gravy is a liquid, I'm not going to put the gravy in the middle. It should theoretically, because it's liquidy, just pour right through everything. The meat and cheese isn't going to fall through quite as easily as the gravy, so you kind of build that. So let's build a second layer and top the whole thing with gravy. One last thing we like to do before we dig in is just put a lid on it and let it kind of heat up and melt that cheese. I mentioned melting the cheese earlier. The meat, the gravy, and the fries will do it a little bit, but if you go get a poutine from a chip wagon, it's in a container, it steams, and you get that cheese curd nice and melted. It's the same thing we're doing here today with this lid. So we'll just leave it on cover for about 3 to 5 minutes, then it should be time to dig in. And there we have it. Our nice finished poutine. Lids come off. It's good to go. Let's give it a try. See how it tastes. I'm a little biased. I love poutine. That's very, very good. Steve did an incredible job on the gravy. A nice smokiness from the pork shines through. The cheese curd is incredible. This is very, very good. If you have a chance to make something like this at home, I highly recommend it. That's it for this video. Hit like if you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell to be notified when we upload next. And let us know down below. What would you like to see us cook next? Or better yet, what's your favorite kind of poutine? Oh, and don't forget, first we cook, then we eat. So good.